Hello, my name is Daniel Stearns, and I'm here with you today to talk about an important issue that has been far overlooked for our society for way too long. This is the incompetence in our judicial system, in our reform of prisoners, and our reform of people that have committed misdemeanor and nonviolent crimes. For this, I will be exploiting the injustices, unfair treatment, and unfair policies in place for people that have committed these misdemeanor and nonviolent crimes in terms of their probationary and parole periods. These periods include harsh regulations for little limbo violations that don't even violate the U.S. criminal laws themselves, but specifically violate these limbo period rules. This system is outdated and needs to be reformed. So, the first thing I'm going to give you is an example that happened to me when I was at school. But first of all, I want to ask you guys, the audience, who here has been written up at Syracuse? Okay, a few of you. I have too. Actually, I've been twice. What happened with me, I was written up as a freshman. I was in a room drinking alcohol. It happened. I was written up, given a slap on the wrist. It was called disciplinary reprimand, and I moved on and went about my day. My life. I continued it as normal. A year and a half later, I went to my friend's room in Booth Hall, was signed in, talked, hung out, and left. About 30 minutes after, his room was raided by DPS. It was found that he had illegal substance in the room, and because I was signed in when he potentially had the substance in the room, I was charged with Rule 19 in the Syracuse Code of Conduct. And if you're not familiar with that, Rule 19 is quoted as the violations of university policies, rules, or regulations that are published in the student handbook or other official university publications or agreements. Sounds pretty bland, right? Because it is. In a way, it's just for the school to get you in trouble, even if you don't break a specific rule. But since I was already on this period of reprimand, I was immediately put on probation, which caused me to lose my grant, put me on bad standing with the school, and it meant I couldn't go abroad. This, in my opinion, was unjust, because I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't even know I was in the presence of anything. Luckily, after a lot of time and appeals, I was able to get myself in front of the right group of people to hear my side of the story, hear how I felt this unjust system and how these rules in place not only were not logical, but just didn't make sense. I was eventually able to get off, getting my grant back, being able to go abroad, and going about my life in good standing with the school. But that's not always how it works in real life. Every year, hundreds and thousands of people are thrown in jail for committing these violations. And they don't have the resources, and people don't care enough about them to help them. They're helpless to an outdated, poorly structured system which penalizes people for crimes they committed God knows when ago. This is unfair and is the true sense of injustice in our own country's judicial process, which is meant to be in place to serve justice and re-implement people into our society so they can not only better themselves and their family, but society as a whole. And so far, this rule has prevented us from doing that. So, many of you might have heard about Meek Mill. He's become the face of this issue. He was put in jail in 2019 because in the year 2007, he was charged with a misdemeanor gun charge. And the only witness in this misdemeanor gun charge was a police officer who was later found guilty of lying and theft throughout his entire career. After serving 5 months of his 4-year sentence, Meek Mill was finally released and granted a retrial. He later pled guilty to his 12-year-old gun charge that was a misdemeanor crime and finally closed this case. But why was he put in jail in the first place if he was only on probation? For riding a dirt bike in the street to entertain children in an impoverished neighborhood to put smiles on their face. Not only is that not a crime, that's doing something for the benefit of society. It's not like it's a harm to society. It's not like it's not safe. But in the terms of his agreement, it violated his rule. It violated his probationary system, and he was put in jail for 2 to 4 years for trying to put a smile on a few poor kids' face. That itself shows the injustices in these rules and in these regulations. Luckily, he had the money, the fame, the notoriety, and legal team behind him to expose this. And even after the fact, District Attorney of Philadelphia, Lori Kernzer, stated he was unfairly treated in a case that exemplifies the destruction and caused by excessive supervision of the probation and parole system, instances of corruption, and under the process of criminal courts was unjust. So even the person that's supposed to be on the side of implementing this rule and probationary violations not only acknowledged the issue of injustice with it, but showed their support for the need for reform for this unfair practice. But here's the question I have for you. What if Meek Mill had no money? He wasn't famous. He didn't have the people behind him. Would we have ever heard about it? Probably not. Would he still be in jail? Probably. And this issue wouldn't have been brought into the light the way that it has been. We practice this system of jail to prison to getting off to parole, and the purpose of parole is to help better the person and reintegrate them into society for the betterment of themselves and society. But a study by George F. Davis, who's studied the judicial system and injustices for a very long time, found that in a study that in low socioeconomic backgrounds where these people don't have money and resources to fight these injustice programs, that there's little funding or care, and these participants are not only unfairly treated, but set up to fail. Set up to fail. Why do we have a program in place that's supposed to be for the betterment of the people, to put them back into society, that in turn sets them up to fail? That doesn't make any sense. Even over 30% of people have their parole revoked and are sent back into prison. That is an absurdly large amount. Even though 62% of people have no violations and are able to move on with their lives, 30% is 30% too many for violating minimal rules that doesn't affect society, misdemeanor and non-violent activities that put them back in jail, not only exposing them to the harmfulness and mental effects from prison, but expose their families to the effects of having a person who fills an economic void or who fills a parental guidance purpose absent. That not only affects that family, but it affects generations of years and years to come. And that's why we see this problem impacting communities as a whole, because it's a cyclical effect that continues and continues, and without reform, it will not stop. I promise you that. So, what communities are being affected? It's not people that have money. It's not people that have resources, because they bail themselves out. They're still able to be with their families. They usually face lower fines and lower punishment and don't have to wait in jail for months and months at a time waiting for a court hearing for a small violation of a parole requirement. So, who is being affected? And this is where it starts to get really disturbing. This specific group of African Americans and low societal income people are affected much larger than anyone else, and shows the bias and ignorance in our judicial system to realize that certain people don't have the resources to fight these charges and to clean their records. And it shows how we discriminate against people that have money to people that don't in the judicial process, and that at the end of the day, money does talk. Money serves a purpose. And if you don't have it and you don't have anything backing you, and all you have is a public defense attorney, you're probably taking a plea deal, and you're probably going to sit up for months in jail, while your family may starve, may go homeless. And that in turn causes the effects of parental incarceration on a child. Every year, 1 in 40 children are affected by the parental incarceration, especially people that are going in and out repeatedly through jail on parole violations for minimal violations. These effects can cause a child to develop anxiety, depression, PTSD, child homelessness, substance abuse issues, dropping out of school, and other horrible activities. This leads to the child then having to fill the void for his parent that is incarcerated, and a lot of them don't have the resources to do it on a legal level. A lot of them in terms have to steal food to feed themselves. Not because they want to, but because they have to, because their parent could be in jail for not fulfilling his community service requirements on his parole period. And where's the justice in that? How does that benefit society as a whole? It doesn't. It doesn't. 700,000 people a year are incarcerated for non-violent crimes, misdemeanor crimes. That's 700,000 people whose families are affected on a daily basis by the injustices of these rules and these probationary violation methods, and how we treat the people that we deem as less than, as rule breakers, as people that can't benefit society, not because they can't, because they were never given a fair shot. It's genuinely just not fair. Many of these charges for African Americans and people of low socioeconomic background come from drug charges. And it's actually interesting because an African American is 6 times more likely than a white person to go to prison on a drug charge, yet they are no more likely, yet even considered less likely, to actually be committing these crimes themselves. So why are they going to jail? Because there's a minimal drug charge sentence. And if someone's on probation, or if someone's on parole and they get caught with it, there's a minimum sentence that they have to serve. The inclusion of eliminating this minimum sentence is necessary, as it is, again, outdated and unnecessary. A sentence should not be set for a minimum sentence. It should be set by the violations that the person committed themselves, not this outdated rule that we've had in place for far too long, that hurts us as a society and continues this cyclical loop between child and parent, affecting generations and generations, and causing a cycle of poverty and a cycle of people in and out of jail, a cycle of children that grow up without both parents, a cycle of children that go through mental health issues because they have nobody there to help them. It's a problem that's overlooked and ignored. But the thing is, we can do something to fix it. Since 1991 to 2007, the amount of parents incarcerated has doubled. And 60% of them, children, are 5 to 14 years old. Key development years. Key development years in shaping what they think and the actions they choose to make in their lives. While we can't fix everybody, we can help the people that actually can benefit society, can break the cycle that's in their family, break this horrible loop by doing nothing else but treating them fairly in a court of law, not treating it off a violation that happened a decade ago. A violation that they made as a 17-year-old trying to feed their family, trying to help provide for their siblings and their mother or their father or somebody, not because they wanted to, but because they were left with no other choice, based on poorly funded programs and poorly funded schools and the consistency of being ignored by the general population. But it's time to stop ignoring these people, to give them a voice. The people that don't have the resources, that don't have the money to help themselves, it's our job to help them. As not only as this practice is immoral, but for the betterment of society and our judicial process alone, it's necessary for this reform to occur. Because if not only are we going to see incarcerations continue to rise, we're going to see them start to skyrocket. We're going to see children without parents skyrocket. Children homelessness will skyrocket. Anxiety and depression will skyrocket. Drug use will skyrocket because of this. It's not an opinion, it's a fact. It's proven. And the only way we can stop this is by adding reform to eliminate the access of a person's prior misdemeanor record during their hearing and sentencing, and to judge them not for something that they once did, but for what they did now. And how we can finally reform this parole and probationary system to not just set people up to fail, but to actually help them reintegrate into society and benefit themselves and their family. So please, if you care about any of this at all, which you should, for our society and country's sake, I beg you, after you leave here, to look at www.breakthecycle.com and make your pledge made and make your voice heard for the people that don't have a voice. And also, for any of you passionate about putting this to an end, please join the Reform Alliance, as we have already raised over $50 million to help these people with no resources and little financial help and little anything, and just to help them. We just raise this money so they can actually have a fair shot. So I beg you, please, when you leave here, take a look into both of those and show America and show our judicial system that we together stand for reform and we do not stand for injustice. Thank you.